Okay, Penny, I understand you have some breaking news on something that's coming together, some misinformation that the media aren't reporting on. What exactly is all this about?
Yeah, so out there in social media land with people that are aware of what's going on in the world, Benjamin Doyle from the Green Party has hit the headlines last weekend, really, because he was standing on the street on the steps of Parliament and he was promoting puberty blockers that should be unrestricted for children of all ages. So he hit the sort of alt media headlines at that point, and then people have been looking into him over the time and dragging up some photographs that he's got that seem inappropriate on social media, and then he pulled them down. So it's created a real furore in the alternative media, and then Winston Peters came out on social media saying, hey media, hey mainstream media, you're going to report on this, it's a big story.
Well, what were the issues that were so bad about him standing and promoting what he wanted to promote? And I know I'm not a big fan of puberty blockers for kids. I kind of leave the kids alone. But what's the law currently as it stands about why he would have an issue?
Well, from my understanding, they're currently an unrestricted drug, and there's a big call to have them restricted. And obviously there was a consultation that came out a few months ago about it. So that's already a contentious issue.
So he's concerned that he's going to lose that total lack of restriction.
Yeah, and I mean, they've already got it. They've already got what they want, as far as I know. It's pretty easy to get puberty blockers here, and New Zealand has the largest number of children per capita on them. Meanwhile, around the world, because of the Cass report and the WPATH files and the other global research and exposure of the harms of puberty blockers, there's a call to ban them, which is happening.
There's a trend moving away from it, isn't there?
Trying to be, but New Zealand, it's been frustrating because we've been very slow on the uptake, and there's a lot of reasons why that's happening.
It's published science and data about the dangers of them.
100%, but we haven't been able to get the mainstream media to have a good look at it anyway, right? So then he's on the steps of Parliament at a protest asking for more freedom to give children puberty blockers because that should be the child's rights. There was pictures of him sitting with young children on his lap and things like that. So people have gone and looked at his social media and the name of it. And to be honest, I don't go and have a whole lot of look at that stuff. I do more research into what's behind all of this, which is what I'm here to sort of show tonight.
Yeah,
so I'm not going to go...
To your credit, you've dug up some things, but anyone can find this stuff, right?
Yeah, anyone can find what I'm showing. So really what I'm trying to do is just do a quick light touch breadcrumb trail for people that they can go and have a look for themselves, because mainstream media is not giving a balanced report. And we're just going to show a couple of little things, but they're very much coming out on the side of the Green Party on this. So, the Green Party are in the hot seat. The media are coming out on the side of the Green Party, and they seem to be pushing for Winston Peters to be the bad guy in this.
And yet Winston was saying, hey, mainstream media, why aren't you reporting on what this guy's up to? That's
right. He was asking for mainstream media to report on it. And then when they have come out initially, and I'll go through this in a minute, but initially it looked like it was a Green Party media release, and then that's been pulled back. It's gone now. And
so some really lazy reporting from mainstream media.
Lazy reporting, but also one-sided political reporting, which we know we have here in New Zealand. But this is probably the current most extreme version of this that we're observing. Mm-hmm. And I just want to talk a little bit about why I think that this is happening and what are the potential ramifications of it, just from my own observations of what I've been doing research on for a while.
Okay, do you want me to bring it up?
Yeah, so let's kick into it.
Okay. Call for Prime Minister to step in over Winston Peters' comments, is that what we're on?
Yeah, so this one just landed at 5:30 this evening, which is Radio New Zealand's updated article on what they're saying. So this is the Green Party's calling for the Prime Minister to step in over Winston Peters' comments. So they're basically asking Luxon to deal to Winston Peters, who's raising concerns about someone who seems to be being inappropriate. So they're coming out anti-Winston Peters to protect their own guy.
Okay.
But they're getting the media story on it. So here's Chloe Shawbrook and Marama Davidson. Shall we listen for a few minutes?
Yeah.
That the Deputy Prime Minister has made about a Green Member of Parliament and the harm this is causing. We are calling on the Prime Minister to take responsibility for the behaviour of his coalition colleague. We are deeply concerned that the Deputy Prime Minister has doubled down on disinformation and is actively fanning flames of hatred towards the beautiful rainbow community. I am especially concerned about the risk of real violence. Over the weekend, Green Party representatives reached out to the Prime Minister directly and New Zealand First's Chief of Staff to ensure they understand the danger this behaviour creates. I want to be extremely clear here. We are currently screening an immense number of death threats and abuse directed at our MP, Benjamin Doyle, and their precious tamaiti. These threats are driven by dangerous conspiracy thinking and are amplified by Destiny's Church and the Deputy Prime Minister. Members of any minority community, like our rainbow community, are accustomed to using and co-opting terms that may not be well understood by external groups, oftentimes with irreverence and absurdity. The central conspiracy here is that the use of such a word on a private account by an MP before they were an MP is inherently suspicious. This isn't the standard politicking by the Deputy Prime Minister. This isn't a game of who's winning this round of clickbait. Just a month ago, we've seen Destiny Church physically attack people at drag storytime based on the deeply dangerous trope that the rainbow community presents a danger to children. These attacks on Benjamin come from the same playbook. We are calling on the Prime Minister to shut down this behaviour and draw a clear line that this is not acceptable within his government.
Gee, she speaks really methodically. I was almost in a hypnotised state. It's quite slow, isn't it? It's
very scripted.
Very scripted, very sort of like a big whole lot of nothing about a whole lot of nothing. But I don't know, it sounds serious. Is any of it true?
Well, I would say the way that the media is spinning this is they're fully backing their take on it, that the trans community are hated on and everybody wants them to die, and this is what we're going to look at, because I don't represent Destiny Church or Brian Tamaki. I represent myself as an investigative reporter who's looking at the data and the money that goes into this industry. And I hear stories every day of the harm and the young people that take their lives when they've had their identities confused by adults who should know better than to confuse them into this. So it's a way bigger topic that everybody who's got half a brain and is awake is aware that something funny is going on here. But they double down on the story that they are this marginalised, hated group, and that if anybody dare criticise them, it's because we want them to die. Which isn't the story at all. It's never what anyone said. It's the story that they make
like
up.
They're walling off some kind of sacred area that you're not allowed to criticise.
Yeah, and this is exactly what's, the things like Let Kids Be Kids talk about, is that when you have unstable identities or are hyper-focused in your identity as to one thing, being your sexual preference or your race, for example, then you need constant affirmation. And if anyone dare criticise you, you're out the gate. Which is a sad indictment that society's gotten to that point where we can't just have discourse or say, hey, you be you and I'll be me and we just do our thing. Why do I have to have this shoved down my throat if I don't like it?
Yeah, well, not only that, the mainstream media is not allowed to report and say anything, like you just said. They're gagged from doing so. And we know this because of that old rule of that which you can't say is what controls you, and that obviously therefore controls them. They can't say anything along those lines.
That's right. And I mean, more and more people are waking up to the fact that there's clearly stuff, whether it's this topic or others, that are a no-go zone for the mainstream media. And in New Zealand, we have it real bad. People who are asleep at the wheel and are just tuning into the news and assuming that what they're being told is the truth won't even have a clue that this is going on because of what mainstream media does. So then they're told that if you question this stuff, you're the problem. Now, I talk to people out there in the world all the time who may not be as aware of things as me, but they turn off the news now because they just get all this crap shoved down their throats and they're over it.
Yeah,
People are just over it.
Ideology, isn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, we can sit here and represent the voice of the people who are over it. Clearly, the voice of the so-called rainbow community, which I'll just say, I call it an industry, not a community, because it actually seems to be about money and power and putting people in positions and lobbying and activism. The actual people that represent some of the letters in LGBTQ, lesbian and gay communities, for example, and I'm guessing too intersex because that's a biological situation rather than ideological. They don't want a bar of this. And actually Winston Peters talks about that too. But anyone who's out there who knows gay people, lesbian people, know that they're actually more on our side than their side on this. So they're talking...
the fundamental ideology.
Yeah. So,
well, let's have a look at the information that the mainstream media aren't allowed to report on.
Yeah, well, what I want to show next is actually an article that went out on mainstream media this morning. So basically this story's been going on over the weekend and for a few days.
Okay.
And the call from a lot of people, including Winston Peters, was, hey, mainstream media, where are you on this?
Yeah,
and they were deathly silent.
Well, as we now know, they're not allowed to talk about it, so they don't really have any freedom of speech there.
No, they're obviously gagged.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I really pity for the mainstream reporters who probably have a whole lot of things they'd like to report fairly on. You know, the stuff they spent thousands of dollars at university to learn how to be a journalist, only to find out there's things they can't talk about. But what's this one?
Well, even just going back to that, like even the fact that we can have that conversation because we're not them and we're not under a gag order is so important because when people who might still be unaware of what's going on realise that they are being gagged, then the question must be why. What are the no-go topics and why are they the no-go topics?
Yeah.
You know? But anyway, earlier this morning, there was an article that came out across the mainstream media because they're all kind of one and the same. And it got pulled down after a few hours, but I actually jumped on and screen recorded the 1ZB version of it, but it kind of went out on other platforms as well.
When was it pulled down? How long after you saw it?
I'm not sure because I recorded this at 11:44 and then it was only this afternoon when one of the team that I'm with were putting it up on another social media channel and they said, oh, that link that you put up is broken.
Gone. Pulled it. Okay.
Yeah, and so then I went up and sure enough it was gone. And sometimes they refresh the article, but that article was gone burger and then it was replaced in other channels by the one that we just looked at, which was Greens having their say. But what I realised was going on actually after watching, seeing some posts on X and it was Ro Edge, who we've had in studio, she mentioned that this was a media release from the Greens. So more than anything else, this is lazy reporting of mainstream media that just would have received a media release potentially from the Green Party and just reposted it out. So talk about gag order, but also talk about lazy journalism here. Literally, this was the article earlier this morning. And yeah, it was very much just quoting Chloe Schwalbrook, and it was definitely a media release.
Peters has decided to double down on disinformation. Well, what's his disinformation he's doubled down on?
I know, right? That's the thing. They call misinformation disinformation when you think that they don't like hearing. And then again, they call out there about Destiny Church.
Oh, yeah.
And then they have they're trying to get Winston Peters in the firing line. This is definitely a war, political media war.
It's not really clear to me what the big issue is and why they're so suddenly defensive.
Oh,
because they're making a big deal about something and I'm trying to get to the bottom of what on earth are they worried about? Okay,
so what I understand it to be is he's done something and he's seen stuff. People have seen stuff that they believe is linked to pedophilia. Okay.
Whoa.
So now he's pulled all that stuff offline. So Winston's saying, "Hey, media, let's have a look at this and let's ask the question why he's pulled this stuff offline if it was okay, if it wasn't pedophilia." So that's basically the basis that I understand it to be. Now.
Okay, so now we understand why she's so methodically and serious, going, "This is about hate speech and because they're trying to defend a guy who maybe has pedophilic associations." Is that where we're going to there?
Yeah, but what they're doing is they're linking it to the fact that they're saying, without providing any evidence, that he's now had multiple death threats. So they're actually saying that
Winston Peters... so I was wondering why a guy who's just a lovely man, a teacher and an LGBTQ guy and an important part of the Green Party would have death threats because, I don't wish harm upon anyone. other people worried about.
Yeah, because lots of people online have connected some information on some of his social media to what is perceived to be pedophilia.
Okay.
And pedophilia symbols and images with children and things like that. So that's what Winston was saying. Can we take a look at this, please, Greens? And, a lot of Greens MPs have been under the pump for different things like theft and other things like that, drink driving and all the things. So this one is the pedophilia, and whoa! Like first we had like deathly silence from the media, and now we have the media siding with the Greens saying, oh, this poor guy who, they're not wanting to talk about what he is being blamed for doing or fronting up.
Because he's, a member of LGBTQ, he's had death threats. Whereas most of the other lesbian, gay people I know don't get day-to-day death threats.
So that's it. So that's where I look at this, and I think there's a potential here that what this could be is, well, there's two ways that you could look at it. It could be exposure. It could be a whole lot of people about to go down. Or it could be the next thing that New Zealand has to deal with, like the Posey Parker event, which is a situation that occurred that was presented completely differently in the media, which is then now used again and again and again to say trans people in New Zealand are unsafe. Everybody hates trans people, right? So this is what this seems like to me, is that they've set this up. They've set this up to be a hit job on trans people, when actually the call initially was, here's a young guy who's made it into Parliament, who's promoting the use of puberty blockers on children, and people have gone and looked at his social media and they think there's some questionable, potentially pedophilic stuff there. We need to, as the people of New Zealand, ask why he's in Parliament. Should be a fair question.
Yeah, fair
why
question.
Why is the storm happening that's now got Chloe in front and centre asking for Winston to be stepped down? Like
because nothing about just asking to have Winston step down makes any sense at all.
No,
what's that old phrase in Shakespeare? Methinks the lady doth protest too much, as if to imply they're really trying to hide something.
Absolutely.
And they're actually proving that they're trying to hide something by sort of talking like this and saying there are bad people who are making death threats and Destiny Church. I'm like, come on. Are they really trying to hide something?
One would have to ask if they're really trying to hide something, because surely, and this often happens, is if something untoward is happening with your MP, you take it offline and you take it really seriously.
Cover
and
up real hard.
You investigate it.
You speak hypnotically like this and make sure people know someone's bad. Yeah, okay. What have we got?
It's crazy. It's just crazy. Well, so what I just wanted to show next is all of the media and most of the big organisations in New Zealand are either connected to something called the Pride Pledge or the Rainbow Tick. So we're going to have a look at both of these to try and understand why the media is not representative of the population base. So the population base of New Zealand, the majority of them are heterosexual. And even if they're not pro this pride push anymore, because they know it's been politically hijacked. And then you have a tiny minority of people that would identify as trans and want to be part of this activism. Because there's some people that would identify as trans that don't want to be part of this activism. So what I'm saying is the funnel gets very, very small for the actual people that are really backing this stuff. And the money that goes into this is completely disproportionate, considering as well that they cry that they're marginalised. They appear to be the identity group in New Zealand that gets more funding and more policies written about them than anybody else. But they're a really tiny group of people. It appears when you compare the one-sided way that they always report out on the poor marginalised community of trans, which then leads to going, oh, these poor people, and now they need more money because they've got people on wait lists and they need more money for their IPL, their laser hair surgery, so that the men can look more feminine and all of that stuff. So it's all driving towards, it's lobbying, but they're leveraging media to do it, is what I understand to be mainstream media, which is why the only way that you'll find balanced media on this, or media that's allowed to question it, is not mainstream media. So let's just scan through. So we've got TVNZ. I mean, this is a massive list, and people might see companies that they work for there and go, oh, I see. It's all the banks and everything.
Nice.
Councils are on there, the banks, insurance agencies, and all the things. But let's just look at media. So then you've got Sky, so they're part of it.
Yeah.
Well, you've got New Zealand Rugby. Yeah, there's a lot of Queenstown businesses here.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Queenstown Lakes was up there, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's so many. There's hundreds. There's hundreds and hundreds. There you go. Radio New Zealand.
Right, and we just saw a report from Radio New Zealand, so
Right.
that's interesting. So again, now we get into the issue of what they feel comfortable about reporting and not reporting.
That's correct.
Do they need to maintain their Pride pledge for any particular reason? Like does it help them in their business to maintain a Pride pledge in order to get money themselves?
It's a very good question because from the research that myself and others have done, it seems to be connected to the United Nations ESGs, so the economic, social and governance scores.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it all comes down from the United Nations. So this is where I say, is New Zealand really in charge? Are the people in New Zealand really doing what's best for the people, or is this something that's coming from higher up?
But does this mean if they lose their Pride pledge status, then they lose some kind of grant money or special treatment that they benefit from?
Potentially, or an ESG score. And I know that that is what has been evidenced overseas. So there's a document called Comprehensive Sexuality Education that I've referred to in the past with Let Kids Be Kids. I can put the link below, where they've actually traced that back in the EU as far as the countries not getting billions of dollars if they don't push this stuff through.
But now we're talking about if you don't play ball and if you don't report in a certain way or you don't do a certain thing, you lose money.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
So that's why I always do #FollowTheMoney.
Yeah.
And I pull it back from what they try and make it, which is they make it really emotive. They being the trans lobby community, industry, they make it really emotive, and they say that if you criticise us, basically you're the enemy.
But you can look for yourself if
you
you
can
want
look
to
for yourself. So
look
please
more
go
closely at
go to Pride Pledge, and they have
.co.nz.
Yeah, so there's hundreds. Now I'm just going to flick to the next one. This used to be called the Rainbow Tick.
Right.
And it's now, they've put a Māori name on it, so Toitu Takatapui, and this is owned by Ngāti Whātua. And then if you go over to the members here, you'll see again, you've got NZME right at the top. Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
They're so NZME and Media Works own most of the media in New Zealand, which owns the Herald. You can see a lot of the same companies are there, but also some different ones. So people need to go and have a look at all of that to get an understanding of the money. And what they can also do is see how much each company has to give each year.
Oh, sorry, I missed something. So this is more than just a voluntary kind of we pledge our support. You're actually giving money if you're one of these companies. You've got to pay to be on the list.
Yeah.
Okay.
Certification. I'm going back to the Pride Pledge one. So it talks about what is certification. So it gives you a whole lot of things that they want to do. But basically one of the things is that these organisations would donate money into the Pride organisations and charities and things like that, which is why there's so many of them, because they've got to go and put their money somewhere. So you have to get certified, and you have to showcase. So you generally have to do things like, so they have to agree to a pledge, a Pride pledge. They have to do a stock take. So that's an industry there which is created to go in and do basically a review or an audit of their company to see if they're Pride friendly, a friendly workplace.
Sure.
If they've got friendly HR policies for the Pride people and things. They need to have a commitment, a public commitment. So they have to go out there publicly and say we're supporting Pride. Remember, this is for a teeny tiny minority of the population who aren't as marginalised as they tell us. But they say that they're marginalised so that they get all this attention and money. They are active in the Rainbow Network. They have to undergo training. So they put their staff through training, which I call rainbow washing. Mm-hmm. And I've talked to people who don't want to do it, but they're told they have to if they work for this company. Mm-hmm. And then they have KPIs. So there's different amounts that they have to pay. So a large company would pay like $11,000 a year to have the certification, which then creates this industry.
Right.
So that's important, because then you can start to see why the mainstream media may not be speaking from the point of view of neutrality or the concerns of the wider public. And the Fourth Estate was meant to be the watchdog of the politicians, not their propaganda arm.
True.
Okay. So when they're not being neutral, they lose all their credibility. Now, Winston Peters was the Beehive just a couple of hours ago. I was actually just listening to this on my way to the studio, and we can play a couple of minutes of it, but he starts off talking about what he was there to talk about, which was his transport portfolio, and they all just start asking him questions about this situation, and they're really trying to defame him, so they're not listening to his take on it at all. They all have this one-sided view, and you'll see all
I love it when Winston's in these situations because he does handle it rather well.
He does, and I mean, he knows what he's up against here, right?
Yeah.
But they try real hard, so this is what their attempt is, to try and snag him.
Real cheap shots sort of territory.
Yeah, I think they're trying to snag him, so let's have a look.
His post, not mine.
Did you know?
That's what I make of that, and I'm making a straight logic. I didn't make the posts, he did.
They did. That you're fanning dangerous conspiracy theories.
Beg your pardon?
They've also said that you're fanning dangerous conspiracy theories.
Oh, look, this is identity politics at its worst. It's virtue signaling at its worst.
Yeah,
all
virtue
I'm
signaling.
asking you is to ask him to explain his posts. That's all.
I'm going to pause it there because I can put the link in the video below. But what you can observe really straight there is that they're going after him, and he actually says right at the end, he goes, "You're going after the wrong guy." You know, which kind of, he should have said that right at the beginning. They're going after the wrong guy. They're totally trying to gun him down.
Right.
And he wasn't the guy sharing objectionable photographs.
No.
He was the guy calling for the media. All he was doing in that post that he talks about, 175,000 people, was going, "Hey, media, where are you on this story?" And then they're fronting up trying to push him out. What I was doing as everyone was going crazy and looking at all the social media posts was I was like, well, everyone else is doing that. So what's going on behind it, which is you and I talk about some of the political stuff and the USAID funding, because we know that it's political. Like, people are so sick of the media pretending that it's not political and that they use the words misinformation, disinformation, all of that stuff. We're sick of it. So anyway, I did a big deep dive into Benjamin Doyle today, and I found a few things that I just want to breadcrumb trail for people to go and have a look at, because honestly, we're all chasing our tails here. So in 2023, he wrote a thesis for his master's at Waikato University, and that was called Mana Takatapui, Self-Determination for Queer Rangatahi Māori.
Okay.
And you can download it for free. Now, due to copyright, we're going to play it really safe here, and we're not going to show it up on screen. And we'll put the links in so people can go and have a look, and you can download it and read it for yourself. Now, I'm just going to kind of summarize what I have read in it so far, and it's, to me, highly concerning. And I would really like to do a call out for Māori people to download this and read it and decide whether this is representative of you, because what he's doing, and he's not the only one. This is the whole thing. Like, everyone's got the gun out for this guy. He's one of many, many. He's one of a whole industry here that is pushing, it pushes the rainbow minority together with the Māori population. And they're saying that this group of people are being so marginalised because of colonialism and white patriarchy. Sounding familiar? Like, is that?
Yeah, it sounds like you're trying to stir up some division.
It is, yeah. And so people need to see what's really going on here, because the rainbow stuff has always been tied into, and I love the Māori people. It's not the Māori people, it's the corporatisation of the Māori people and the politicisation of them, okay? And it is happening around the world. I talk to people in this space all around the world, and it's happening with their corporatised, corrupted Indigenous people, and it's tied into the rainbow community, and this is a global play.
So is this the one that you mentioned earlier to me off screen, that he has made a statement that Maori are largely non-binary or more fluid than you'd ever imagine?
Yep. So this document, his thesis, is stating that up until colonialisation, Māori were mostly non-binary.
Really?
So this is why I would like Māori people to have a look at this if it stays up online, and others like it, because it's not the only, I'm not trying to put him in the firing line in particular. This is much bigger than this guy.
If that's true, and Māori didn't have a clear sense of male and female, it's news to me. I mean,
well, it's probably news to much of them as well. Otherwise, they might not have had a race, to be fair.
but I guess if you lump the two together, the Māori race and non-binary sort of issues, then you can really drum up a kind of a race war, because you can say you're saying bad things about non-binary, and we know that they're all Maori, despite what they might say. And so then you've got a division you can kick off and spark off, right?
I call it colour wars.
Oh,
I mean, it's traditional colour wars that's been used as a political strategy for years, but now they've thrown in the multicolour of the rainbow into it as well. So it's a double go at colour wars, and people need to realise that this is not just kindness at play, because it's actually white shaming, anti-colonial, and I don't consider myself a colonialist. I mean, I was born here. And what's interesting when you look at his thesis, and sorry, my ear thing, and people know this too, is that the Māori that are really politicised out there are not full-blown Māori. They have other genealogy in their blood as well. And are they embarrassed about that? Are they ashamed of it? Or is it just that this one gets them the most noise? Because at the beginning of his thesis, he talks about his own whakapapa, and he's Irish, Scottish, English, and then he says he's got a nana that's Māori, but he doesn't explain that whakapapa back.
Oh, well,
so he's mostly not
just like me,
Māori.
actually. So it's
Exactly.
kind of funny.
Yeah, he's like most of us, right?
Yeah.
But why is he now? He's the Green MP's spokesperson for Māori and Rainbow Affairs, and he's done this thesis. So this is important because my understanding of the research that I've been doing is that this has been a political long march through the institutions, and the way that they did it was through the universities. So now they have people in the universities, and they have funding in the universities for this kind of research to be carried out in order for them to then prove their point that they're a marginalised group and colonialism was the worst thing that happened to them. Right. Remembering that he's only got a little bit of Māori blood in him.
Right.
I'm only talking the common sense of what the people that are not gagged are saying.
Right.
Right? I'm not putting anything out here that's particularly a shock to most of the population that are thinking. It's just that because you don't hear it in the media, they put this blanket over it. And when you put a blanket over truth and free speech, whatever voice that they say, even if it's a minority, sounds to those who are still tuning in like they're representing the majority of the people.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah, well, and from what he said, the majority of Māori are some kind of trans situation there.
Yeah, and in his thesis, he also talks about things like...
It'd be interesting to see what Māori actually say about that.
I would really like to know what Māori and Māori scholars and kaimātua in the Māori community, who I really respect, would like to say about this. Yeah. I think they should get online and have a look, and I think that they should provide their own response.
Of Māori legend, myth and history is a real strong sense of the importance of male and female.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard anything else. I'm not saying I've got it right. I just hadn't heard anything. It's new to me.
No, well, right at the front of his thesis, he talks about the Māori legend of the way that the earth was created being Ranginui and Papatūānuku, being the male and the woman, being the earth and the sky, and it's separated. But he's woven into there, along with he's cited.
I do remember that one.
Yeah, I mean, we all remember that from school, and it comes through stronger the more you've got kids because they get that legend put through. Right. And that's fine, and that's always been a lovely story. But it was always binary. It was always the man and the woman, and the children was Tane Mahuta was the child, right? So it's breaking apart. So they're basically challenging gender norms, and they're breaking apart what a functioning family is. Like, there's so many layers to this, but what they've done, and if I were Māori, I'd be particularly offended, is that they're using the Māori culture in order to do it. Yeah. So I really would like Māori to have a look at it. They also talk about, he also talks about in here, and I'm sorry, I'm not using the preferred pronouns. I'm going to call him a he. And all of the stuff they call them they, but they to me is a plural. It sounds like two people.
Yeah, just keep it easy. Honestly, it's kind of newspeak. I'm not really into it.
I don't play the game. I don't use the words. You're either a he or a she.
Sure.
Okay, and even if you're intersex, you're one or the other in the majority of what you do.
So what did he say in here? The bits that you can quote.
Yeah, well, so the bit there's so much in here, and it's quite horrifying. But the one that I just thought to pull up was he talks about he was talking about back in 2021, so prior to the Conversion Therapy Ban Act going in, even though this report was written in 2023 when it was. But it's just saying that they're talking about conversion therapy, and that conversion therapy is an attempt to change a person's sexual or gender orientation, whereas actually the original meaning of conversion therapy was actually, no, you are born in the right body. So it wasn't about changing. It was about keeping someone as it is. It's so weird what he's talking about, but he also references the United Nations. that the United Nations called for a ban on conversion therapy practices. And so if people haven't seen and want to go back to the second USAID video that we did where we talked about that, and I talk about the UN guy that goes all around the world basically getting groups of people around different countries to push through this Conversion Therapy Ban Act, which was pushed through here. So it's all connected. It's all connected. He knows all about it. He's part of that community.
So give me a quote from it.
While writing this thesis, another struggle for LGBTQ plus rights has been taking place. As of the 1st of September 2021, it was still legal in Aotearoa to practice conversion therapy, which involves attempts to change a person's sexual or gender orientation through both psychological and physical interventions. This is despite being labelled false and wholly unscientific by the United Nations in its call to ban conversion therapy globally. And that was stated from the United Nations in 2020, as well as a national campaign led by both the Conversion Therapy Action Group and the Green Party of Aotearoa, which saw a petition with nearly 160,000 signatures presented to Parliament in 2021 demanding a ban on conversion therapy. I mean, the crazy thing about the conversion therapy thing, and that's not even the main part of this article, I want people to look at it from as far as the racial interpretations. What the trans community are doing is conversion therapy.
Oh, that's an interesting take on it.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
That converting a kid who was okay in his body into a kid who's not, that is conversion therapy.
Yeah.
So they
Good
seem
point.
to be okay about doing it if it's going in their direction, but anything that's not going in their direction, they call conversion therapy, and they're saying you're not allowed to do it.
Gotcha.
Madness. Total and utter madness. But the conversion therapy thing's a bit of a side thing, but I'm trying to show you how interconnected it is. I want to just, I'm hoping people have had enough time to decide that they want to go and look at that thesis, and we'll go and have a look at it for themselves. And I'm just going to jump to the next part of what I wanted to cover, which is gender minorities. So this is one of the charities in New Zealand that gets funding from the government. So this is a page for gender minorities about activism. So again, you see that they're lobbyists and they're activists. They actually get government funding and grant funding in order to create resources that is activism, which is political, which I don't think that charities should be political. I'm pretty sure they get kicked out of the Charities Commission for doing that. Big investigation needs to happen. Anyway, what I found on this website was something called a resource, again, this is government funded, called Anti-Transgender Extremism. Anti-Transgender Extremism. And we're just going to have a bit of a scan through because once again, you can go to the Gender Minorities website and you can download it, and I want people to look at this for themselves because this is the crux. When I saw this is the crux of the political playbook, okay? So let me just scroll through. It's about identifying, preventing and countering anti-transgender extremism. By the way, if those words are confusing for you, what they're saying is us.
Sorry, what? They're saying that's us.
Yeah, anyone who's not them or an ally of them is called an anti-transgender extremist.
Oh, so we can't question this. No. Oh, so we're supposed to just roll over like the media do and just go, oh, we can't talk about this.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So this guide provides practical advice on recognising, preventing and countering anti-transgender extremism with a focus on keeping community events safe from anti-transgender violence. So this would be their playbook on how to deal with things like the Posey Parker, things like what is happening right now. They're calling themselves the victim and they're saying if anyone's against them, you're an anti-transgender extremism.
Posey Parker just wanted to establish what a woman is, right?
She just wanted to be able to say that women should have women's spaces.
Fair enough. I mean, we've already got women's toilets. I can't
And
see
the-
any problem with that, and women's sport. And
No, but
Yeah.
men who want to be women or want to identify as women are taking over those spaces. So then women don't have a
Right.
safe space. And it's not rocket science to understand what that is. So the only people who take umbrage to that are men who want access to women's spaces. Because men who don't want access to women's spaces,
they're quite okay with that. Yeah.
and women, all women who want their own space. I don't know any woman who want a man in their space.
No.
So there's only a minority of people, which are men that get off on going into women's spaces or want to be a woman. But then that doesn't make sense either, because if you want to be a woman, then surely you want all the things that a woman wants, and a woman wants her own space. It's a circular argument, but anyway, we'll keep going.
Okay.
So, so this guide is for transgender people who organise or attend community events, allies and supporters. So anyone who isn't us, basically. Anyway, here we go. It assumes a foundational understanding of transphobia. So it's creating the definition of what transphobia is. Transphobia consists of three main parts: anti-trans stereotypes, anti-trans prejudice, anti-trans discrimination. So what they're doing with Winston Peters, because he's questioned a non-binary member of parliament, is they're going to tag him with these. He'll be an anti-trans discrimination.
Their rule book for that, okay.
And anti-trans stereotypes is anyone who is saying there are two sexes.
Oh, no.
Because they say that there's a heap of different genders and people can choose them and it's all an emotional thing. So that's what. So if you're questioning biological science, you're called an anti-trans stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any of these elements on its own can be transphobia. Stereotypes include, for example, the idea that trans people aren't real, that they are delusional, or that they are dangerous. Prejudicial feelings are usually based on these stereotypical ideas and may include fear, anger, discomfort, distrust, it goes on, directed towards trans people. Now, anyone who's been watching my stuff knows that I'm not against a person, I'm against the ideology. And that's what most of us are talking about. So they turn it into this personal attack. And we're not usually doing a personal attack. We're usually questioning the biological facts, the political narrative, where the money is going. But woe betide you do that, because then you're an anti-transgender extremist.
Yeah, I note it says transphobia is used similarly to homophobia.
Yes, and I've been called a transphobic, homophobic bigot because I ran a parents' meeting questioning some of the stuff in Nelson, and the deputy mayor there, who is queer, he states that.
Yeah, sure.
He was the one who complained. So he then uses this playbook, right, or something similar to it. So they basically they describe and prescribe how and what we are and how to deal with us, which means going after us in social media, going after us personally, coming to our events and protesting. Right. And all we are a bunch of heterosexual people, maybe not even heterosexual people, maybe a lesbian and gay people. In fact, they come to my meetings. I'm friends with them too, who know that this is what it is.
I mean, if you dare question what the schools are up to with your kids, I mean, that's
dare
crossing
we?
The line, isn't it? You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, they want to have access to our children, but they don't want the parents to have access to their own children. So, but I just want to pull out here a couple of different things. So they talk about strategies and goals and tactics of, I'm going to call them people like us who are just not their allies, right? They're calling us anti-transgender extremists, and it says strategies, goals and tactics of anti-transgender extremists have been described as genocidal. They use really strong language here, and you need to remember all the time that this is government funded.
Right.
Okay? Throughout history and around the world, anti-transgender extremism have organised in a myriad of ways to dehumanise, harm, kill, illegalise and eradicate transgender people. It's not based in truth in New Zealand.
No.
That they created the one event that they have that they pin everything on is the Posey Parker event, and now they're going to pin the Benjamin Doyle event.
Ooh.
Right?
Ooh, interesting prediction, Penny.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit more because I want to show you how quickly it turns into even worse. So that these are people who are questioning the rainbow trans, by the way, extremist groups. There are a broad spectrum of groups which advocate for extreme anti-trans ideas or measures, from fundamentalist faith-based groups, hence their hit pieces all the time on Destiny Church,
right,
to white supremacist groups, gender-critical women's groups, which is mums, often, and even lesbian women, to political parties supporting fascism and many groups in between. For some groups, this is part of a wider goal of subordination or elimination of people who don't fit their ideal. For example, one example is groups which promote racial purity, which we're not doing that. We're a total melting pot here in New Zealand. We all know that we've got blood from lots of different things. So this is not even based in truth. It says that they tend to see LGBTQ people as damaging to family structures. What the families are saying is, we don't want you to invite it in. But if my child grows up and wants to do what they want to do with their adult body, that's a different conversation. But don't bring it into my child, and I've got the right to say that. But that's what we're losing in education because this stuff comes through, right? They say that the main goal is eliminating transgender people. Well, again, we're not targeting the people, we're targeting the politics. We're targeting the ideology, and we're also talking about the money. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. Almost all of these groups believe that there are only two genders and will oppose non-binary people as well as seeing intersex people as defective. Well, I've never talked about an intersex person as defective. They have atypical genitalia, and that's a real thing. The fact that they lump intersex, and actually at the beginning of the document they say that intersex is not actually part of them, but they group it in because they want to be nice to them. It's a crazy story. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit more, and they start talking about at the organised and enforced end of anti-trans extremism is far-right, ultra-conservative political interests and fascism. This has been the case time and time again throughout history. And then they bring in the Jewish side of things, and they start talking about Nazism. So remembering that this is funded through the government and private grants and organisations, this to me is the playbook in New Zealand of all of the groups that are pushing this ideology. They're not coming from a place of caring for genuine people who are expressing distress or trauma or have gender dysphoria. They're, I believe, a hate group calling us a hate group.
Oh, the irony, the hate groups calling other people hate groups.
Yeah. Fascism's interest in anti-trans extremism. To understand why transgender people are so hated by fascist groups, it's necessary to know a little bit about fascism, how fascism views gender, and the roles of women and men in a fascist framework. So they are calling us fascists. Just for questioning, please go and download this. Please have a look at it and pull it apart. Come up with what you're saying, what you think that this is, and overlay it with what you see going on in society. It's crazy. I'm just going to show one more thing, and that is that if you go to the Green Party's website, you can just search up. All I've done here is I've searched up the term rainbow in their search box, and you can find lots of information about their policies, what they're lobbying for. And I shared this on an X post the other day that they, if they were in power, they would have a minister of rainbow communities. I don't know whether there's actually a number of what would be the minimum amount of the population that identifies as such before they spend money on having a minister for it, but that's a question that would be asked.
It's a little bit like a minister of table tennis. It's the sort of thing that if we had our own Doge group, we would quickly eliminate, I think.
I think so.
It sounds just like, how about minister of sewing?
Yeah. Well, the difference being that those groups aren't touting themselves as being marginalised and hated on, right? But they're not, because they're just doing their thing.
I'll tell you, some sewers have a hard time.
So they've got the Greens policy. They've got it linked to the education policy. They want rainbow stuff through in all the education. And by the way, they're anti-charter schools as well. So that means that what they would want if they're in power is that every school does the same thing. So then they want to have rainbow stuff all through the schools, which it actually already is. So they're kind of already there.
Right.
The PPTA, the teachers' unions, have rainbow communities that are lobbying to put all this stuff into the schools. So that's why parents are exhausted who are aware of this. So I talk to them all the time, and they're just this onslaught, right? And it's not because they're saying, well, my child needs all this support, or they're it's hidden from them, and they're only going to find out about it if these people come along. They're actually trying to turn people into part of their community, which is where this becomes a problem because it's ideological.
But that's conversion therapy.
I believe that is conversion therapy. That is the crazy thing about it, and no one's allowed to say that. I would like to talk to a lawyer who would like to look at the case of conversion therapy of the rainbow community onto ordinary citizens. Yeah. So we need a lot of help here because they have, like say, from looking at the Pride Pledge, they have all the money. They could turn the taps off. They've turned the taps off over at USAID in America.
They've got to be shitting themselves because that's a real source of income that's just been turned off, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's saying that it's for aid, but it's actually for funding Indigenous minority groups like this has been funded, and we're trying to find to see whether there's any funding that's come directly from it, apart from what I was able to find that was generally associated to some of the key rainbow agencies here. But the point is, the reason of showing the Pride Pledge and the rainbow tick is that even if the tap gets turned off overseas, very much on here.
Well, because you saw all those people on the
all the
Pride
companies.
Pledge companies that are paying to be there so that that money can go off to the lobby groups as required to then keep, asking for special ministers for groups. I think they should have a minister of philately.
Philately?
You know what a philatelist is?
Tell me.
I know it sounds a bit sexual. It's actually stamp collecting.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
and
my father-in-law was a
we
stamp
need one
collector.
of those urgently, okay? Because philatelists like me are underrepresented.
Yep. Yeah, if we all were up in arms, if we all tried to politicise our little quirks. So anyway, go and have a look at the Greens website and have a look at what they want to do for rainbow communities. And I thought they were about the environment, but they seem to be really, really into the rainbow community in a really big way. And you'll see that most of the people who are the MPs are not heterosexual. So they're probably disproportionately represented there. I just want to finish off by saying, in my research into Benjamin Doyle, he's worked at a number of high schools. And if there are people from these high schools that have seen any concerns, because that's the big question that started all of this, was there seemed to be inappropriate pictures on his social media posts that have been pulled down now of being with children. Now, he's obviously a high school teacher, so they were not little children. So I'm not making any claims here. But the information that I've been provided with is that he has taught at Auckland Girls Grammar, Manurewa High School. He was head of Māori at Melville High, and he was head of social sciences at Rotorua High. He's been teaching in schools, and then he did the thesis, and then not long after he did his thesis, he got into being an MP in Parliament, and he's had this rapid rise. I don't know many teachers out there that would be teaching and then a couple of years later be an MP at his age. But yeah, if there's anything untoward that has happened at any of those schools in his time there, and people want to have a conversation and keep it private, because the mainstream media are not picking up on the stories as the people would hear them, I would just like to offer that I'll listen.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool.
So please go and have a look at the links below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Would love to hear from some kaimātua who get to look at his thesis. And this is a big conversation that's not going away anytime soon, but don't give up.
I know we're not allowed to make fun of these things because the fascists told us so. The real fascists don't have a sense of humour. But, just set the record straight for us if you're out there and you need to go, well, actually, we're all non-binary because we're mostly that. Because I'm 1/64th part Māori, I'm going to have to reassess a few things about myself. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it?
I know.
We'll see you again soon.
See you then.